Welcome back, Curious Hearts. This is episode 32, and I wanted to share a little uh, opening before we dive in. And that is that I recorded this episode a few weeks ago, and a lot of things have happened in the United States since then. And I had a thought about whether I wanted to release this or if I wanted to find some other practice that I wanted to share about. But I think this practice of self study and self discovery, self curiosity, is one that can really support us in this moment. And that is because it is so easy and tempting when things are upsetting or confusing or frustrating or infuriating to direct our blame and judgment at other people. And certainly in the current circumstance, there are a lot of people to blame. And there is a lot of suffering that is happening that is unnecessary. And every time we direct all of our attention to the world outside instead of to what's going on in our inner place, we lose the capacity to make real profound change. And I really deeply believe that this is true, that each of us has been raised inside of the cultures that we've been raised inside of. We all have these systems built into our consciousness, into our habits and our patterns, and that we often end up colonizing our bodies, right? Borrowing this thought from my friend Kate Becker, that we come to our body looking to extract. We come to our heart and our spiritual self looking to extract rather than to meet ourselves exactly where we are. We come to ourselves with a hierarchical value judgment because our system, the world that we live in, asks us to have those kinds of external value judgments that are often connected to identity, whether that's, white-bodied, dark-bodied, brown-skinned, whether I speak the native language, my cultural history, my apparent gender, all of those things. That we have this hierarchy that gets built in our world, and we unconsciously absorb those hierarchies into the way that we think, into the way we move, and the way we feel. And one of the pathways out of that, it's not the only one, but one of the pathways out of that is a sense of clear and deep reflection into how we are feeling, what we think, and the way that we are and are not willing to act in the world. So with that caveat, that opening, I just want to wish you the warmest thoughts that I can. I know many of us are very cold this week. I send you blessings of community and connection and love and the warmth of a curious heart, of a friendship that I hope that we are cultivating. And I'm going to keep showing up, and I need you to too. Hey, Curious Hearts, welcome back. This is episode 32, and it's about self-study. This is a practice that I think is essential, and I think we see it across all sorts of different traditions. But it's a great example of a spiritual practice that is additive, right? I think if we begin at self-study, we often miss the point. And let me say what I mean by that. I think until we have an ability to be still, until we have an ability to be reflective, and we have cultivated our witness, that self-study and self-examination, we don't have enough perspective. So if that's not something that's already in your practice, if you don't, for example, have an experience of sitting in meditation and being able to watch your own thoughts without getting carried away by them, then I think that this one goes sideways. It's so easy for self-study and self-examination to turn into self-flagellation, punishment, um, examining. It's so easy for self-study and self-examination to turn quickly into self-blame, self-flagellation, or ever so slightly parallel to that, self-improvement. Because if we must improve the self, then it is inherently bad and wrong and something to be fixed. So until we have the skill set, and that is a skill that is built through practice, until we have a skill of witnessing, of listening, of directing our intention, self-study, we're just not ready yet. So that's my caveat to you. Self-reflective practices are almost always lumped in with other spiritual practices. Practices like journaling, like meditation that is awareness of the self. That inside of different spiritual traditions, religious traditions even, we see like little examples of this. So very classic example that comes from Christianity, specifically from the Catholic tradition, is the sacrament of confession, right? I am aware of this sin I have committed, and I am bringing this sin to be transmuted by a representative of God. Whatever you think about Catholicism or Christianity, that is, roughly the definition. Inside of 12-step communities, there are actually not just one step, there's a number of steps that are dedicated to this practice of self-examination, self-discovery, and self-realization, right? Beginning with made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, right? So searching and fearless, because both of those things are necessary when we sit down to really examine ourselves, when we sit down to reflect on the complete and whole nature of who we are and what we've done and what we believe. Inside of the yoga tradition, this is sometimes called Svadhyaya. And Svadhyaya is one of the niyamas, and it's reflected in the Yoga Sutras. And in some translations, I just want to recognize that this is what happens. In some translations, Svadhyaya is translated or understood as study of sacred texts, that we commit ourselves to reading and studying the teaching of those spiritual masters who've gone before us. And in its most literal translation, sva means self. And so svadhyaya, in its literal translation, means a study of ourselves or reflection of ourselves. So my favorite Yoga Sutra is 2.1, and it's the translation of it, modern poetic translation, is that the practice of yoga in action is hard work, self-examination, and surrender to the ultimate or to the divine. And I like that in that order because I need some hard work first. That if I start with the self-examination part, I often will find some things I'm doing okay, some things I'm doing. Now I have a practice of seeing all the things that I'm doing well. I might make a long list of all of the things that I was doing poorly, or the things that I had done wrong. But when I start by working hard, when I start by either physically working hard or working deep on a project or being in a deep and profound sense of meditation, which is what tapas, that the word that it's being translated from, actually means. Tapas is our spiritual, devoted practices that are rigorous and challenging. That once I am in that practice of rigorous, challenging spiritual work, there is so much that comes out of the woodwork. I can trick myself, and maybe you can too, into thinking you've got all sorts of things figured out. And then I sit down to meditate for 15 minutes and it all gets blown out of the water. I can think I'm doing a pretty good job, and then I find myself in a yoga practice, in an asana class, and I see myself judging and evaluating myself, everyone else in the room, and the teacher, and also probably being somewhere else entirely. The gifts of my spiritual practice, as I referred to in the beginning, is that now I can see that that's happening. Oh, look, there's my judging mind again. Okay. And I don't go, oh, there's my stupid judgment. What is wrong with me? When am I ever going to get over this? I just go, oh, right, judging. I notice that. And then I return back to the practice that I'm doing. These repeated explorations of self over time are one of many gifts of our spiritual practice. And I think it's important for it to be in the middle and something that we do in an ongoing way. That we are in a constant and consistent practice of self-reflection. How'd that go? Did I do well? What did I do well? What went well in that situation? Oh, wow. What did I screw up in that situation? What mistake did I repeat? Where are the things that I would like to get better at? Not that I need to, but just like, oh, it would be my preference to improve at that thing. Then we also begin to see how we are in relationship. So I talked many episodes back about being in community, and that we can't do any of this by ourselves. We can't be in spiritual practice by ourselves. We need spiritual community to support us, to encourage us, to learn from, and also to challenge us. Because often there's a wonderful old quote about this that I love, which is that if you put the thief in charge of the investigation, much activity will happen, but no arrest will be made. So basically, left to our own devices, we'll do a lot of work and we'll find all sorts of things that we want to find, but we won't find the truth. And so when we're in relationship with other people, we start to notice the patterns. We start to notice the habits. We notice the kinds of relationships that we get into over and over again. And when we do that, then we can reflect on why that happens. What is it about us that we allow ourselves to be in that repeated situation over and over again? When we find ourselves saying the same thing about many other people in the world or in our life, and people in different situations, right? It's like suddenly you hear yourself thinking the same thing about your spouse, about your children, about your boss, and about somebody in traffic. That is like, what a gift, like what a little nugget that is to chew on and examine. And often, if we don't do that in community with others, either we can't see it, or we find those nuggets and we beat ourselves with them. We use them as an excuse to punish, or again, to like self-flagellate. And that is an unfortunate habit, but I don't think it's a particularly useful one. Here's a invitation. Here's a little suggestion, which is that if each of us is either a fragment of the divine, if each of us is created by some divine being, or if each of us is the fullness of divinity that has manifested in order to experience itself, it seems natural then that exploring and discovering ourselves would be a natural part of our process. That in order to understand some sense of the divine or divinity, that we would want to understand ourselves. We would get curious about how we are made and how all of these things come together as one being, and where the ways are that we get stuck and what are the ways that we get free. How are we magnetically drawn to other people, and when do we find ourselves like annoyed or like avoiding people or places or things? That in some ways, this kind of practice of self-discovery and curiosity, self-curiosity, is a kind of worship, not of ourselves and not of our ego, but of the nature of divinity, the nature of the mystery. How on earth did we get here? How was I made? How have I been formed through all of the course of my life? That this becomes a way that we build rich and extraordinary relationship with the divine. So if this is a new to you practice, I'm just going to start by saying I'm guessing it's not new to you. I'm guessing most of the folks who are already listening and who are drawn to work like mine are people who are deeply self-curious and self-discovering. But one of the easiest access points for this is to be in a sense of curiosity and discovery about your body. Like maybe you just sit down and write like all of the things that you say or believe or have experienced about your physical body. What have your hands done? How do you think about your hands? Do you have preferences about your body? Maybe you write a list of the times that you have been ill or injured. And maybe you're continuing to carry forward some of that illness or injury, or maybe you've experienced healing and recovery. Perhaps you, like almost every being walking in a Western world, wish your body looked different than it did. What are the ways that you wish your body were different? What are the ways that your body is extraordinary to you? What are the things about it that you love, that you are grateful for? What has your experience of being embodied been so far? When has your embodiment felt ecstatic and extraordinary and magical? And when has it felt hard and challenging? It's no accident that the yoga practice, especially in the United States, starts with the physical practice. One of my teachers says we begin with the body and the breath because we all have one. And when we are in our asana practice and we're experimenting with moving our body around, when we experiment with challenging ourselves and noticing how we respond to that challenge, that is a practice of self-study that we are engaging in. And so our body is one of these miraculous curricula that we can experience, right? This is like, here's the assignment. You have been given one body. You don't get another one. I mean, maybe you replace parts of them because modern medicine is amazing. But like, this is it. This is the only one you get. And so this is the template for how you study. This is the template for examination and self-curiosity. So maybe you sit down, you press pause for a minute and record a voice memo or jot down a story that you have about your body. And then once you've done that, like go back and re-listen to it or reread what you've written and get curious. What's underneath or inside of that? If you were to examine that, for example, as an anthropologist, if you could witness it, what would it tell you about the being who wrote it, the person who wrote it? What would that thing tell you about the culture and the society in which that being lived, that person lived? And what would it tell you about the creative force that developed, that evolved that body, that being? If nothing else, I hope that this exercise is an opportunity for you to be intellectually curious about yourself. If you get any deep insight, I would love to hear them. You're welcome, if it feels comfortable, to share them in comments on this episode. But if you'd like to share them privately, I cannot tell you how much I would love to hear that. You can send me a message on my Substack, or you can just email me at hello@veralester.com. Curious Hearts, if you've gotten this far, I want to remind you that there is something in the works that I am developing that will be like this. It will be a conversation. It will be a group exploration that we get to do together that includes all of these spiritual practices and principles and maybe more. And that is the gatherings of Curious Hearts. It's coming to all of us in March of 2026. And if it's after that, you can still find us. But if you're interested in being in the first round, I hope that you will find your way into my inbox and let me know so that I can keep you posted when we get started. I'm so curious to hear what you find out about yourself, and I am thrilled and excited for your self-discovery journey over the coming years of your life. Thanks for tuning in, Curious Hearts. If this episode was useful, I hope you'll follow the show or leave a review or share it with somebody who you think needs it. And if you're craving support on your own spiritual path or seeking some meaningful work, you can find ways to work with me at veralester.com. Otherwise, until next time, please stay grounded in that curiosity that you've got and keep turning towards what matters. See y'all soon.